r/ask Reddit. What new obnoxious traits are you noticing in society? GoFundMe for people with money. Any GoFundMe for stuff that people want versus need is immediately obnoxious. Save up like the rest of us for that wedding, vacation, new furniture, etc. I've gotten to the point where I simply page down until it won't go any further. That's typically where the written recipe is. That, or I hit the print recipe button, cuts out all the bullshit and shows just the recipe. But my great grandmother taught me this over an afternoon of cross stitching, and then I made IT for all of my roommates in college when we didn't have any money, but we had money for a special kind of import mushroom you have to go to a specialty grocer to get. Yep, and approval for everything they do after they've done it. People playing games, watching videos, etc. with the sound on in public spaces. Worst is when parents are just sitting there letting their kids play games and watch kids stuff on YouTube with the volume really loud, as it's easier than actually interacting with them and teaching them spatial awareness. Seems to be oddly accepted now. People sometimes give attitude if you don't promptly respond to their texts. They wonder if you're ignoring them when, in fact, you're simply not able to reply at the moment. Hence the purpose of texts and calls. Texts equals reach me back when you can, while calls equals we need to talk now. I don't think people see those purposes as the same anymore. People expecting you to contact them, and then seeing a poor me nobody ever calls texts invites me social media update when they never contact you. My mom used to do this and she really didn't like when I pointed out that the phones work both ways. I used to feel almost overwhelming guilt after my parents got divorced and I went almost a year without talking to my dad's family. Every time I saw my dad he would tell me how sad his mom was that I never called her, but then I would get extreme anxiety every time I picked up the phone to call her. So it was this vicious cycle of guilt anxiety. One day my mom found me crying next to the phone and she pointed out that if my paternal grandmother wanted to talk to me so badly, she could pick up the damn phone herself, and it helped a lot with a huge amount of my social anxiety. Choosing shitty sources of information when all the world's knowledge is at our fingertips. Propaganda and misinformation has always been a tool of the powerful to keep themselves in power, but the internet democratized information, and now that we have access to more information than we could ever consume, a lot of people seem content to not put any effort into figuring out what's true and what isn't. Flaky non-committal people everywhere these days. I'll ask my friend what he's up to tonight. He says he'll let me know, and then nothing. It's gotten to the point where if I don't get a straight answer about plans from any of my friends, I assume it's a no and move on with my day. We live in a society where ghosting is becoming normal, and not committing to something until the very last minute, just in case something better pops up, is the standard. I had a party last year and the amount of RSVPs that came back that said something along the lines of, "If I'm not doing anything I'll come," or "If I'm not doing anything better that night I'll come," made me realize who the flakes were in my life, and I dropped them as friends. That type of character trait is toxic. Parents are afraid to tell their kids no. I work in a college setting and I hate when a parent calls and starts the phone call with "My son daughter is in grad school and needs," like duck off. How are they in graduate school but can't request this themselves? I seriously hate my job because I will tell a parent the student needs to request a sensitive document and they flip shit on me. My boss takes online classes for her daughter, fills out her daughter FAFSA forms, registers her for class and uses her school account to communicate with the professors while pretending to be her daughter. It's so beyond ridiculous and she acts like it's totally normal. Traffic is nothing new, but I feel like the stop and go traffic has gotten significantly worse since the rise of smartphones. If you're at a standstill, you check your phone for a little bit without realizing traffic started moving again, delaying the folks behind you, and it just causes a frustrating chain reaction. Having to stop an event or moment to take a picture, take it before or after. Just went to a wedding and noticed that damn near the entire audience was watching the wedding through their phones filming it. If all of my friend family are there, then likely these are your friend family as well. Why the duck do we all need a copy of the wedding in a likely wobbly, noisy, it was windy and an outdoor wedding, poorly lit video format? Who the hell is actually going to go back and watch it? Is it all just to post it on social media to say you're out doing shit? My wife and I are legally married already but never had a traditional wedding ceremony, so we are doing it next year. We decided from that wedding we attended that we're going to request and be adamant about no cell phone use during the ceremony. We have a photographer taking better photos than anything you'll get from your smartphone, and we'd rather people actually be in the moment during the ceremony and so focused on their phone. People getting rude because they had to wait longer than they wanted to for a service. Example. Target line was long and a woman was stating her complaints, purposely louder than necessary, so everyone could hear her. She then beached at the poor cashier. Have some patience, people. I know it exists, but it is just ridiculous to see adults share their emotions or problems in Facebook. I mean, it is entirely possible to talk about it privately to someone, but broadcasting your hate towards a person really damages the credibility of adults. Anytime I see I'm so over fake people post, my friends list gets shorter and higher in quality. Stopping in the middle of the sidewalk without realizing that there are people walking behind them. Most of this is tied to phones, but I live in a large city and it's the easiest way to spot a tourist. Especially when it's a group of people in front walking side by side taking up the whole sidewalk. If you have to make a sudden stop, move to the side. The mob response to everything and the overreactions to evade it. Store wouldn't do X, angry mob and death threats. Worker does Y, fired for following rules to avoid the angry mob. It's terrifying. Who will the angry mob choose next? Maybe me, maybe you. My 4-year-old just looked at me and said, no, he ducking didn't. My 4-year just looked at me and said that I don't have any children and this is all a figment of my imagination. People using their phones during a movie or performance. Stop that shit. If you can't stay off your phone for a couple hours, maybe you should go outside or not go to the show at all. Fubbing. Playing music out loud on terrible sounding Bluetooth speakers while in public. How and why is this coming back? And why are they all listening to mumble rap? Or worse, playing the same thing full blast on their phone speaker. In increasing obsession with policing each other's diehards' bodies, duck off and mind your own business. Instead of getting up in other people's stuff, might want to take a good, long look at why you feel the need to do it. Also insults. WTF. Back in the day, if you couldn't get laid, you just presumed you were an ugly shit with a bad personality and lowered your aim. For the incels thing, there's a story in the Jewish Torah about a man who was basically a proto-incels. He was so in love he would die if he couldn't have the girl. Several times over the rabbi said let him die. The only proper attitude to incels. People intentionally using smartphones and tablets to keep their kids occupied at social outings. The technology itself isn't new, but I've only started noticing people doing this very recently. It's weird seeing a family eating at a restaurant, and their toddler is just sitting there with giant headphones on and watching Paw Patrol or something, completely oblivious to the world around him. I get annoyed every time there's a new fad way to say something. The most recent one is how whenever somebody gets upset about something and goes off on it, people will say that, he was triggered. I'm tired of hearing about how this or that person was triggered. As someone with actual medical triggers, same here. Now people mock mental illnesses even more because they all claim to have them whenever they feel annoyed. A trigger is when something causes a panic attack, not something that annoys you. That's called a pet peeve. This is the term for it. It already exists. Use it. Whenever I hear sirens, it triggers a panic attack. People who stand on the moving side of the escalator is a pet peeve. We have the internet now, and on the internet ignorance is a choice, but people are still choosing ignorance by looking at garbage and not bothering to learn about things. All of my local cinemas stopped showing those turn off your phone ads before movies, and everyone uses their dang phone in the cinema, with the backlight on full. I even saw some kids taking pictures of the movie screen, with flash. Rude students. September will be my 5th year working at a college, and we even had a meeting last year about how the feeder schools have told us that last year's awful students weren't a one-off. The upcoming teenagers are generally ruder and lazier than the ones who were there when I started. Obviously it doesn't apply to all of the thousands of students we get each year. But the problem is becoming so bad we now have security and college had to rewrite their policies because drinking and drugs aren't the biggest problem anymore. It's just teenagers being awful people. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.